Now it's starting. Look at that.
What? I didn't have any idea we were actually starting the videos.
I don't know, this camera has one of those things that just, with the sound or a certain movement, it just like, hey, I'm ready, let's go. So welcome to Module 3, where we're really diving into the tools. And we wanted to kind of set the stage for this one with talking about our inherent worth.
Such a beautiful topic that I don't feel like we really get a really good grasp on, because we hear it talked about like, oh, we're born with all the, beauty, and I know it wasn't called inherent worth as I was growing up. It was called individual worth.
Oh, okay.
And that we had inherent goodness in us because we are God's children, was my background, but never really just like inherent worth, that everything I need to be worthy is already inside me and you. Like I wasn't taught that till I was older.
Well, I think of a baby. A baby doesn't have to do anything, and they are just so showered with love and care and affection. And somewhere along in that journey, we start feeling like we have to earn that love and support and approval, and our sense of worth.
I love the baby analogy because, think about it. A baby messes its pants, and most often we don't have a tantrum, depending on how messy. But we just clean it up, and we put on a new diaper and move on. Baby learning to walk falls down. Oh, sheesh.
Keep going.
We're just gonna, because we also teach real, we're just going to actually connect the microphones. Making mistakes and falling down or not doing things correctly, and how the little ones in our lives, like we don't get upset at the baby who's learning to walk. We're like, oh, took a step. Oh, she just took 3 steps, and they fall down. And what do? We're like,
Okay.
get back up. But we lose that. You're right. As we get older, and we get that kind of knocked out of us, that it's okay to fall down and to actually celebrate it, and then get back up and take more steps. So
I think of that in business. Like when you think of a little kid doing a lemonade stand, how many people just want to stop and support them no matter what. But as we get older, it's like it's almost like you don't want to support them, because somewhere there's a belief like, I don't want you to get ahead of me, or I don't want you to do better than me, or I don't really believe in what you're doing, or
if an adult did a lemonade stand, how many people would actually stop? And the fear of like, oh, times must be really hard for them because they're out on the corner doing a lemonade stand, or times must be really hard for them because they're doing this kind of work, or this. Yeah, it's so crazy, the things that we speak into existence by way of inherent worth and smash down in ourselves and other people.
Yeah. So I wanted to touch a little bit on why this is important in this part of the course. As we move into the other tools, it's really coming back to our sense of our own self-love, and not feeling like we have to do all these things to be validated or to have a sense of worth and value. I think a lot about how we all of us have addictions of some sort to quiet the hum of that constant need for validation and value.
In addiction, you brought up the word addiction. What is addiction? Like,
I think for me, it's a way of it's a numbing of the pain, or like a distraction, or something to focus your energy on.
Addiction comes from disconnection, from source first, whatever that is for you, whatever you call that, and then from self next, and finding ways to feel the ache and the pain and the hole that comes from that disconnect. And we're always trying to find a thing, when in reality, it's doing what we're doing here. It's a learning how to come back to yourself, back home to yourself, to practice having the audacious trust to do that instead of finding all the other myriads of ways that we can practice addiction. And it's far more than drugs and alcohol.
It's shopping, it's scrolling, it could be even reading, obsessively reading, or
exercise,
cleaning.
physical. I mean, it could be any number of things. I remember the first time I did a 12-step program. I remember reading, and I didn't have a drug or alcohol addiction. I didn't have those kinds of things in my world. But I remember reading and hearing everybody has an addiction of some sort. And I was like, oh. And then learning about what that meant and just being so humbled by that, and that having the door open to that recognition of how might I be practicing addiction in my world. And I think that's such a beautiful thing as far as like inherent worth goes, is understanding how we cover that up based on what we've been taught or told or picked up beliefs in.
Absolutely. And I know for myself, one was a food addiction. Not necessarily because I craved those foods, but I was using food as a way to cope with anxiety or feeling really low, or sometimes I would find myself just like binge eating because I wasn't sure what to do with myself and what I was feeling.
Right.
And it wasn't until I did a 24-hour fast that it helped me get back into my body and recognize when my body was actually craving and needing food for sustenance, and I could differentiate because I could feel my body and what it was actually asking for. It was such a big aha for me. As far as that food addiction. But it was hard.
I love that example because I believe lots of us have a food addiction and we're unaware of it. In my work as a personal trainer, I often come across, the practice of keeping a food journal. I'm not a huge believer in keeping food journals. However, I do find value in it when we add in, like the piece we're talking about today, the inherent worth. So adding in the piece of, why am I eating? Who am I eating with? What time am I eating? And what am I eating? And how am I feeling? Mm-hmm. So that we're adding in these pieces of like, oh my gosh, I'm eating because I'm bored. I'm like, all of a sudden the light changed.
Nope.
It's like, forget you. Eating because I'm bored. Eating because an incident has happened that has caused a disruption in my energy or in my thought processes and my feelings. Am I eating because I'm angry? But then here's a really cool thing, is you go and you're like, what did I eat when that particular feeling or emotion came to surface? Was I eating cherry pie? Was I eating goldfish crackers? Was I eating Swedish fish? Or, going to a great big soda and starting to see the consistencies there? What is that addiction? And that makes it easier to go in and start looking at the inherent worth, like, okay, what am I feeling about myself? And how am I remedying that versus doing something that may be a bit or a lot healthier?
Yeah. So I wanted to bring up something that you and I talk about often in the why we do things and the different energy. So there's an example of starting to clean up, and Jen has pointed out to me places where when I'm cleaning,
I was like, I was not expecting this story to be the one for this this lesson.
But it's a great example, right? When I'm in a cleaning mode, sometimes there's just a different energy. So do you want to expand a little bit on that? Like, I think I'm just cleaning, but
sure,
if I really get honest and reflect, there's usually a feeling that's behind that. And I move in a different way. There's a different energy about me.
Sure. So wow, thank you for bringing that up and having audacious trust in that and sharing that out here with our students. Is that one, the vulnerability of that, being able to be vulnerable with our feelings and our stories and put them out there so that we give permission for other people to do the same. But then also the opportunity to say, when we're in situations where we're noticing things like this, how does it hit us? And then learning how to have trust in ourselves and our people on how to work our way through those. So the situation that she is sharing currently is, I'm getting ready to go back to Idaho, and which means we get to be apart for a little while, and that's creating some feelings. Plus family stuff and just, the things that life and the world tends to mush around and roll us around in. And Leah had woken up with some feelings and emotions in the morning, and we talked about them. And then I noticed that there was a whole lot of cleaning going on. And I had to check in with myself and be like, okay. I mean, I knew that we'd had stuff on the counter because we've been working on coursework, and we've been working on the thises and that's and recording other things, and the podcast stuff was all on the table, and so microphones are out, and computers and there's just stuff out. And we'd just been living and kind of getting back into a flow. But then I noticed, like, there's a feel. There's a feel when you're doing an activity, and this one was cleaning, when you're doing it because you actually love doing the thing. Energy
it just has to get done.
Yeah, energy exudes from us, whether you know it or not. It goes way out beyond us. And people can feel your energy far before you enter a room that you're even aware of. So it's just something to take note of. So on this particular day, I'm noticing the cleaning, and I'm thinking about the conversation that we had, and I came out, and dang, the bathroom looked good, and the table was cleared off except for the piles of my stuff that she had neatly put in piles for me to take care of, and which is great. And the counters were clean, but there's an energy, there's a feel to it, versus it's that feeling of I got to get this done, and versus the peacefulness that comes, and the love and attention that comes from, I'm doing this because I enjoy a clean space, because I'm wanting to move some energy in a way that's going to facilitate peace in the household and in the family.
But I also think when it's in that energy of like, I'm just trying to avoid a feeling or not feel it fully, it's less approachable. When say I'm cleaning just because it needs to be clean, I notice that it's easier for you to jump in and just start helping. Whereas when it's in the other energy, there's more like a
There's a lot of prickles. Is that what we call it? It's prickles. It's like porcupine spines like come out, and you're like, oh, yeah. How do I, sometimes I'm like, do I dare weave my way inside of those? And I can say this because we talk about it a lot, but I appreciate you saying that. Like, there is an energy that doesn't feel approachable. And I said something, and you're like, yeah, whatever. And I'm like, no, this is about energy. This is about the energy that's being put off in the household and that's being received by the others in the household. And, if you've got littles in the household, they recognize that stuff. They might not understand it, but they know it.
They can feel it.
And what do often? They hide. Like those parts of me still want to hide. So when we're talking about this, talk about it's the why we're doing things, and how that applies to inherent worth in this situation. And gosh dang, again, thanks for bringing that up. That's I'm celebrating the courage of that.
Well, shame can only live in darkness, and that's something that I really try to practice. And so as far as inherent worth, what comes to mind is, I think that habit of just throwing myself into cleaning. I was in a relationship before that feelings weren't okay, and I had to spend a lot of time not being okay, and just finding ways to be okay, like many of us do. And cleaning was one of my outlets, and I think that's just one of those habits, or just doing. I really had the belief of like, how do people even watch TV? I have no time for anything because I put so much on my to-do list just because in that relationship, I felt like no matter what I did or how much I did or what I did, it just never felt enough. And so my solution was to do more and do more. And I never had problems sleeping at night because I was so exhausted.
Right. Well, and it's the kind of exhaustion that you're exhausted. It takes everything out of you. It's an energy. If you've cleaned your house and you've played with your family and all of the things in a way that's giving, the exhaustion is a different kind of exhaustion at the end of the day. You lay down and you're like, oh, that's a good day versus like, oh, and it's not regenerating.
Well, and I just remember the first time you said to me, like, you don't have to do all this stuff to have value and worth in my space. And my mind was like, what? What do you mean? Like, of course I need to. What am I without all these things? Who am I without doing all these things? What good am I to you without all these things? Because I think I had this feeling in that relationship, if like I have to earn my keep, I have to, and
Right.
there is a place for contributing, but that inherent feeling of unworthiness is what I think I had lived in a long time. So that was a big shift for me.
That's challenging. I'll never forget. We talked about this before we got on camera of when I said that to you, because I noticed the behaviors of like just her wanting to do more, because she can do a lot of things. She's talented and skilled in a lot of things, as are you and myself. And I remember the day I had a coworker. We were working in the gym and she was incredibly talented at what she did. Beautiful bodybuilder, working in this gym and that gym and doing this and that and that. And she was going to add something else. And I remember one day I'd had this aha for myself and I said, whoa, Joe, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. You got to be wise about all of these gifts and talents as well. And I just started noticing that with Leah, is because she is skilled at this and she gets excited about wanting to get in and put what I say into words because she sees the pictures of it. And I started noticing the pattern of, if I do more, I'm worth more. And when I said to you, you don't have to do all that. Like I love you and appreciate you and all the things without doing more. And it was like,
it really, like I really had a place of like, then one, there was some sense of relief. I remember that feeling. But two, just kind of this like, well, then what? Like, how can you say that? How am I worth? Like, how do I have worth in this relationship? How do I contribute? But it's so interesting how, because that was over a year ago now. But how, because I have that sense of inherent worth, I don't need to push myself to such extremes to still contribute and feel like I have value.
Well, and I think that's the key right there, is to recognize that we are born with all of the worthiness and value we need. If we did nothing on this planet but, I want to say, pee and poo our pants, like a baby. If they did nothing else as a baby, it doesn't change their value. It doesn't change their worth. And as we grow, that doesn't change inside of us. If we did nothing but get up in a day and enjoy the sunshine or the cloudness or the moisture or the whatever, that would be enough. That's even still, I have some moments of like wrapping my mind around that, because it's so ingrained that I've got to be doing something.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And I think the flip side of what you just said is when we have that for ourselves, not to turn that on other people.
Yeah.
And expect that from the people around us, because that's how we function. And then we place that on other people and lessen their worth and their value or their self-concept.
Or judge them.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a big one.
So,
and I mean, there's a place where you could be doing all these things and, believing that you make all this difference. And the reality is that that your doingness could be seriously just taken away from you one day to the next, and then you get to see how the world continues to move forward without all your doingness. So you're running yourself ragged, and you don't need to. I think the best example I have of that in my own world was I was always wanting to be super mom. I have 4 kids, married. I had in-laws. I was doing all these things and running around and looking after everyone. And one day I hurt my back, and I slipped a disc in my lower back, and I was out, like legit out for 2 weeks that I couldn't do anything on my own, and 6 weeks that I had to be really careful with how I moved, and a lot of appointments and stuff. But I got to have the humbling experience of watching my family get along just fine without me. Like that was so humbling for me, and it really made me check in.
How did that assist you in recognizing your worth and your value? Because I think some people may think that would lessen it, but how did that for you help increase that for you?
I think there was some appreciation, and just of how much I was doing, but I also think it gave permission for them to care for me in that space, and to come together to be helpful to one another.
I love it. I love it. So
I don't think that I know the answer to your questions in that space, because I didn't have the languaging to have the understanding of that.
Okay,
or think that way.
So let's take it this way, because you the student may be thinking the same thing, like, well, what? And that's really honest. I appreciate that. So looking back on that, as the person you are sitting right here today, how do you see that you had worth and value looking back on that experience? How did it manifest for you that, whoa, I still am worthy and valuable, even though my family's taking care of all the things?
I think again, just that I could be cared for, that I had to humble myself to be cared for, because I was very much that person of, I do everything for you. I don't need anything. I don't want to take anything from anyone. So I think it was an opportunity for me to reevaluate everything I was doing. Take time to do other things. Like I wrote a lot during that time because I really couldn't do much else, and just to be cared for.
So in the quietness of that, and we're going to talk about quietness in another video, you had the opportunity to see other places that you have worth and value without, like, in a more quiet way, without all of the doingness for the family, is what I'm hearing you say.
I also got to see my family's value, and just how capable they were, and I think in that space I recognized how much I was trying to make myself needed, and
which, as a mom,
yeah,
if you're a mom watching this, you know how that goes. We all want to be needed, and dads do too. We're not cutting dads out.
Yeah.
So again, it kind of goes back to, if kind of coming full circle, is just a reminder that we're born worthy. We're born worthy. Everything that gives us worth and value is already born inside of us. And that we don't have to do anything. Like, if we left this planet the way we came into it, it would be amazing. If we lived our whole life like that, we would be amazing. That doesn't change. And that all of these other things that we do by way of projects, activities, work, family, whatever it may be, they're experiences. They're experiences that build and grow our strengths or our knowledge and wisdom, but it doesn't change our value. Nothing changes that inherent worth and value. And so just the reminder that you're amazing just the way you are. And when you wake up in the morning, to remember that you're freaking amazing. And then to check in throughout the day of, why am I doing what I'm doing? Am I doing it because I want to and it feels good? Now, granted, some things are necessary, but still, you can check in with the necessary things. Why am I doing it? Am I causing other people? Am I wanting other people to behave and act in the same ways that I do, and maybe causing some consternation in their world or some judgment of themselves or impose judgment on them because you want that way? So some of the tools or practices is, again, is why are you doing things? Is there something that you could do differently? And then just observe. Watch other people in their world.
These are great questions to do as part of your journaling practice.
What?
All right. We'll see you in the next one.